While the nation's focus, understandably enough, remains on the unfolding disaster in Victoria, the federal government can't afford to ignore the states where life has pretty much returned to normal, or as normal as it can be without a vaccine for this virus. The Victorian Premier reckons there are about 500,000 people working from home in that state, plus another 500,000 who are stood down because of the government's forced closure of businesses from tomorrow night. Of the 4.5 million workers in Victoria, public sector employees aside, about the only people working normally are those involved with food or health, utilities and manufacturing plants like cement and aluminium that can't be turned off. Almost every single Victorian's life has been severely disrupted, with vast consequences for the local economy that could take years to recover, and serious consequences too for the national economy, which faces a longer, deeper recession and a much heavier tax bill as federal taxpayers are forced to pay for Daniel Andrews' incompetence. But while there are lots of people in Victoria who'd like to work but can't, it seems there are lots of people in other states who could work but are choosing not to. This is the problem with the JobKeeper and JobSeeker payments that the government hurriedly put in place back in March and April. As I said at the time then, the government had a duty to keep the businesses and their workers that government policy was shutting down, keeping them afloat. But, and this is the point, the extraordinary help at that time should only last as long as the extraordinary circumstances that made it necessary. From the outset, I said it was a mistake not to pay workers their real wages, but instead to pay everybody on JobSeeker a flat $1,500 a fortnight, regardless of what they actually earned. And we know almost 1 million workers were better off on welfare than they were before the pandemic. It was also a mistake, I think, to double the dole and at the same time drop all the normal requirements for the unemployed to look for work. It's abundantly clear that lots of workers on JobKeeper have been reluctant to actually turn up, even when there's work for them to do, and that lots of people on JobSeeker have shown no interest in taking the jobs on offer. Paradoxically, at a time where there's less work than ever, thanks to government policy, there's fewer willing workers than ever, again, thanks to government policy. One of the worst consequences of this pandemic has been the growth of the something for nothing mindset. It's not right that able-bodied people should be on the dole when there's fruit picking, cleaning or table serving jobs that can't be filled. And it's wrong that businesses can't get back on their feet because they can't get workers, which in turn makes it so much harder for our country to get the budget back into some sort of shape and start paying back the billions we've borrowed to survive this outbreak. So here's a thought for the federal government that's had to pay for the closures that state governments have decreed. In those states that are now pretty much back to normal, Queensland, Western Australia, South Australia and Tasmania, plus the 2 territories, let's get the rules back to normal too. Surely it's time in those states to insist that people on unemployment benefits have to look for at least 20 jobs a month. That's not more than 1 a day, really, and not refuse any reasonable work that's offered to them. Eventually, this pandemic will end, and the need for all of us to be productive and for all of us not to live beyond our means as a country, no less as individuals and households, hopefully will reassert itself. And people should never be lulled into thinking that the world owes them a living, and the sooner the Morrison government makes it clear that there is no new normal of big government spending beyond this immediate crisis, the better for everyone, and indeed our nation too.